Welcome to The Explainer. I'm your host, and today we are going on a rapid-fire, deep dive into the bizarre, gritty, and brilliantly resourceful realities of ancient human history. We're leaping across centuries and continents to uncover the hidden tools that shaped empires, altered minds, and literally defined who we are. Settle in, because we are covering a massive amount of ground today, and it's going to be a fantastic ride.
So I have to ask you, what exactly do medieval witches, ancient Mediterranean worships, legendary Persian kings, and a samurai's hair have in common? Well, the answer is that they all reveal the incredible and sometimes shocking lengths to which humanity will go to survive, project power, and carve out an identity in a totally unforgiving world.
Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. Number 1, medieval intoxicants. Number 2, masters of the ancient seas. Number 3, Cyrus the Great's empire. And number 4, the power of ancient hair.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, Medieval Intoxicants and Medicine, the Apothecary's Cabinet.
You know, the Middle Ages are often pictured as this grim parade of plagues and potatoes, where the line between actual medicine and a mystical trip was, well, extremely blurred. If you had a toothache, your herbalist didn't just hand you an aspirin, they had nature. Let's consider these 3 heavy hitters from the medieval apothecary. First up, henbane. In small doses, sure, it eased pain, but in larger doses, it introduced entirely new problems like spontaneous outbursts of interpretive dance or having a heartfelt conversation with a turnip you thought was your deceased grandmother. Then we have mandrake, a sedative root shaped vaguely like a human. Legend actually said it screamed when pulled from the ground, a noise so lethal it could kill a man on the spot. And finally, belladonna, or deadly nightshade. Women used it to dilate their pupils for beauty, but it also caused intense hallucinations. It was essentially the medieval equivalent of saying, let's see what this button does.
But sometimes getting high wasn't exactly a choice. Sometimes it was just breakfast. People unknowingly consumed ergot, which is this parasitic fungus that grew on damp rye. It was essentially the accidental ingredient in what some historians call the original LSD trip. Entire villages would eat this moldy rye bread and fall victim to ergotism. This is a horrific disease that caused muscle spasms, hallucinations, and a burning sensation in the limbs that sometimes resulted in gangrene. It actually triggered bizarre public behavior, like the famous dancing plagues, where huge groups of people just danced uncontrollably for days on end. And that brings us to the surprisingly scandalous history of the witch's broomstick. You see, combining these toxic herbs like henbane and belladonna into a potion and drinking it would probably just kill you outright. Human stomachs are pretty ungrateful. Instead, cunning folk created flying ointments by mixing the herbs with animal fat. But how do you apply it? Well, it was absorbed topically, specifically through the body's mucous membranes. So the broomstick handle was actually an early, highly effective transdermal delivery system for hallucinogens. The resulting chemical trip gave users the euphoric sensation of literally flying through the night sky. Wild, right?
Section 2, Masters of the Ancient Seas, Navigating Power.
Leaving the misty forests of medieval Europe, we're transitioning south to the blinding sun of the ancient Mediterranean. For empires like Athens, Carthage, and later Rome, commanding the sea wasn't just some military option, it was entirely existential. Whoever controlled the flow of trade, grain, and soldiers, well, they dictated the fate of civilizations. 120, that is the terrifying length in feet of an Athenian trireme, but it was only 18 feet wide. Narrow, sleek, and incredibly unstable. It wasn't a floating fortress. It was a fast, guided missile, powered entirely by the sweat of hundreds of trained, lower-class citizen rowers moving in perfect, rhythmic unison.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that ancient naval combat was not just a slugfest, it was high-speed chess. The primary goal was to use a bronze-sheathed prow to ram and pierce the enemy's hull right below the waterline. To get that perfect angle, captains used incredibly complex maneuvers. The diplus involved darting straight through tiny gaps in the enemy line, while the periplus was a rapid circling maneuver to strike the exposed flanks. It required unbelievable precision and coordination.
But what happens when elegant seamanship meets brute force engineering? You get the Roman corvus. When Rome realized it just couldn't outsail the legendary Carthaginians, they completely changed the rules of the game. They attached a massive boarding bridge with a metal spike, the corvus, to the front of their ships. When they got close, they just dropped the spike, locking the ships together. Rome effectively turned a delicate sea battle into a brutal, bloody land brawl, playing exactly to the strength of their unstoppable infantry legions.
Section 3, Cyrus the Great's Empire, the Benevolent Conqueror. Let's shift our focus east,
moving from the bloody waters of the Mediterranean to the sprawling deserts and mountains of Persia. Here we meet a man who completely rewrote the rules of imperial conquest, Cyrus the Great. The speed of his expansion is just staggering. In 550 BCE, he overthrew the mighty Median Empire. By 547 BCE, he turned to the fabulously wealthy kingdom of Lydia, defeating King Croesus using a brilliant tactical surprise. He actually used camels to terrify the Lydian cavalry horses. But rather than executing him, Cyrus showed mercy, making him an advisor. And in 539 BCE, he managed the absolute impossible. He captured the impenetrable, magnificent city of Babylon without a single fight, stepping in as a liberator rather than a conqueror. This excerpt comes from the famous Cyrus Cylinder. Listen to the language here. I am Cyrus. I sought the welfare of the city of Babylon and all its sanctuaries. As for the population of Babylon, I soothed their weariness, I freed them from their bonds. Often considered by many as an early charter of human rights, it's a revolutionary glimpse into how Cyrus saw power, not as domination, but as stewardship.
So the crucial point is this: Cyrus maintained control over the largest empire the world had ever seen, not through fear, destruction, and erasure, but through strategic tolerance and inclusion. He decentralized power using local governors called satraps. He respected local gods, restored temples, and most famously, liberated the Jewish people from Babylonian exile, allowing them to return to Jerusalem. He basically made it easier for people to love him than to rebel against him. Section 4. The Tower of Ancient Hair, Follicles of Fate. For our final chapter today, we transition away from battlefields and empires to something deeply personal yet universally political. Across the ancient world, hair was literally never just a fashion choice. It was a powerful social tool and a walking identity card. In ancient Egypt, priests and nobles shaved their heads for ritual purity, placing spectacular, elaborate wigs on top to project immense status and divine closeness. For the Vikings, long braids and thick beards broadcasted warrior readiness and honor. In ancient Japan, the samurai's chonmage, or top knot, was a cultural contract of discipline and bushido. Cutting it off was a sign of utter disgrace. And in Sparta, while other Greek women wore long flowing locks, Spartan women wore their hair short to symbolize physical readiness and fierce independence. And this brilliantly illustrates how a single physical trait could represent completely opposing philosophical worldviews in the exact same region. In ancient China under Confucianism, your hair was a sacred gift from your parents. Cutting it was a grave offense of filial piety and was sometimes even used as a severe criminal punishment. But for Buddhist and Taoist monks in that very same era, shaving the head entirely was the ultimate act of enlightenment. It was a complete rejection of worldly attachments and a physical embrace of spiritual detachment. But perhaps the most profound use of hair in history was as a vital tool for survival. During the transatlantic slave trade, enslaved Africans used hairstyles as silent forms of rebellion. Cornrows were not merely practical. They were intricately woven maps. Certain patterns literally symbolized escape routes or safe meeting points. Braids were used to conceal seeds to plant in new lands, preserving agricultural heritage and defying erasure with every single twist. It was an incredibly ingenious form of resistance against unimaginable oppression.
Section 5. Conclusion. The Human Anthology. We've zoomed through a lot of history today, from peasants hallucinating on moldy rye and Athenians turning ships into missiles, to a Persian king rewriting human rights and enslaved Africans mapping freedom on their scalps. It brings the entire human anthology into a sharp, brilliant focus. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Across centuries and continents, are we really so different from the ancients? Or do we just use modern tools to navigate the exact same human struggles for survival, power, and identity? I'll let the magnitude of that sink in. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please hit that like button on this explainer, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who absolutely loves history. Finally, I want to hear from you right now in the comments. Where in the world are you tuning in from, and what time is it for you? I love seeing our global community come together. Until next time, stay curious.